What's up, everybody? Hoang Zero here, and today I have what was highly requested on Twitter today, the Belphemon deck profile, and I have with me today one of the best purple players in all of North America, guest starring Tesero. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello, I'm Tesero. If you've been on Hoang's channel before, you've probably seen me a couple of times. Hoang wanted someone who generally plays a lot of purple to introduce Belphemon to you guys. So I'll be here to introduce you guys to the deck and what all the cards do and do your general strategies when it comes to it.
Yeah, and Tesero has been playing purple ever since it first was introduced in the Japanese format, so he's a lot of experience with it. And recently he has not only gotten a top with Belphemon, he actually was in the finals for one of the regionals, but also he was the primary suspect for bringing over Mill Loop over to North America. So I think you are going to really enjoy what he has to say. So without further ado, let's get started.
Alright, so starting off with the eggs, we're playing Demi-Meramon. It's generally the optimal deck for this deck. It's a draw/discard type of deck, so it makes Demi-Meramon pretty optimal. It's more optimal than other draw/discard eggs because it has on-deletion. You have a lot of synergies with on-deletions. You can be self-deleting a lot using your Gizmons. And you also want to set up your trash with specific pieces, which was what makes discard more optimal than mill in this strategy generally. So Demi-Mera is pretty much a no-brainer. If you played purple before, you're probably familiar with running Demi-Mera in general anyway. Moving on to the rookies, we're starting with Fastcomon. You can run any number of rookies in this deck. You don't generally Evo claim a lot, but generally you want on-deletion rookies. Well, not generally, but like on-deletion rookies are pretty good. You can run Tapermon or Fastcomon, but Fastcomon is generally preferred because he draws and discards, and you don't want to, and not just draws like Tapermon, and you want to like keep your hand size fairly low because of Rage Mode's condition that requires 6 or less cards in hand. But Fastcomon is really good. He is on deletion, so you can delete him with your Gizmon AT, or just swing him into security to trigger the draw and discard, which lets you cycle for new pieces and such and fill up your trash, all that good stuff. And his inherit is really nice as well. It comes up quite a bit if you ever evolve it up into an Astamon, since that lets you trigger Astamon's effect at the end of the opponent's turn. Moving on to Floodgates is your other big, other normal level 3s you generally run, because like I said before, you frequently don't actually evolve up into Belphemon in this deck, which makes Floodgates work really well in the deck. You can also bring them back out from your trash using the Astamon effect, which gives you a bit more flexibility in terms of being able to have them out when optimal. And there's also just quite a few decks that, like, say, get shut down, not entirely shut down, but get hurt by the presence of Belphemon. You have things like the Mirror, Hunters, Cross, Blue Flare, and Royal Knights that are all like, you can run into this meta that you can get shut down by Psychmon. Gazimon isn't as useful as Psychmon generally, but he's still nice and occasionally if you has a niche into stopping memory boosts, into stopping Lilith Loop, and stopping Bloom Lord. And as a side note, you are allowed to use Gizmon AT to pop your Psychmon and still have the reduced cost of AT. He will be dead at that time. But going into the main engine of the deck is the Gizmons. Proto Gizmon, Gizmon AT, Gizmon XT, right? All of them can delete something to reduce their play cost, which makes them really cheap to play. The Proto Giz and Proto X AT have the draw and discard effects that you really want to fill your trash with, and also cycle for pieces. They all float into each other, on deletion. They spawn the next one in the line if you have enough of them in the trash for that effect. And that part of the effect is extremely powerful. It's really good at making sure you have a large board that's really hard to out. Really contributes to your creating opportunities to have kill turns with it. And Karada, it's like one of your main ways to climb into Belphemon sleep mode as your win condition. Generally, because you play from their hand and they don't plus you, they help you to reduce your hand size, which is really nice for rage mode, but you also have to be really careful with them. If you overuse them, you can be stuck with less than 3 or 2 cards in your hand and have very few options in terms of what you can do in a turn. Like, for example, if you're going second and the opponent gives you 3 memory on your first turn, you can actually you can play Proto Gizmon, then you can play AT, then Gizmon XT all on the same turn, and then you'll be stuck with 3 cards in your hand. So you'd have everything set up, but then you would have no cards in hand. They're definitely one of the strongest part of the decks, but also what makes you kind of vulnerable to like non-deletion based removals, like you're playing against Hunters or Mirage Go. You know, you don't get to trigger their on deletion in that case, and that makes those matchups kind of suck. And the Gizmons are also really good at enabling lethal with the Belphemon. Like as mentioned before, they have on the on deletion float into each other, which makes them really sticky. And then you there's a lot of other purposes for that. If they're at an odd number of security, you can swing with one of them, then either it dies and floats into a new body, or that it lives, and either way you still have something to sacrifice for Rage Mode's unsuspend, so you do maximum damage that way. But if they're at like an even number, another thing you can do is that because Proto Gizmon is extremely cheap, he only costs 1 to play by sacrificing an egg, he's usually your optimal guy to play down and sacrifice, so you can deal more damage with your Belphemon and then use your other body that you have to swing for game, which is something you generally can pull off pretty easily because Astamon gets you a free body at the end of your opponent's turn, usually before your opponent can even do anything to interact with that. Moving on to the Eismons. Eismons is generally pretty good cards for this deck. Again, draw and discard is usually what you want for this deck, and you can self-pop it with Gizmon XT, so you have a lot of ways to pop it. And also, thanks to the way the timing works, if you do pop it with XT, you can discard off with the Eismon effect before XT brings the Karada from your trash onto the board. And the one of Eismon is also really great in this deck as well. Having extra bodies is always really nice. Play one of the Gizmons, like Proto Gizmon. You can discard Eismon to play it, and then evolve that into Astamon as like a really cheap and easy way to go into Belphemon. And then Devimon. Devimon is really nice because Sleep Mode stops attacks, but it's only like once per turn. So you can use the Astamon effect to bring out a blocker to get an extra bit of defense, which is going to be really important, especially if you're fighting anything that can attack unsuspended and attack over Sleep Mode. So Sleep Mode can like stop that attack, right? But like if you're fighting something, say Orgray, who can unsuspend itself when he does so, you will need that blocker to save your Sleep Mode from being deleted. And the 1 cost Evo for Devimon is really nice because it lets you turbo into Astamon if you have like another body on board to pop for the Astamon effect. Alternatively, you can play other blockers such as Vilemon if, say, you think the extra DP is more important to you than the 1 cost Evo. It's up to personal preference. There's also other level 4s that have really nice effects when played at Astamon. You can consider like Ogremon or Porcupamon, which have nice deletion effects that can also save you. Moving on to Astamon, he is one of your main enablers for going into Belphemon really quickly. Generally, you do need like 2 bodies on board, but you work just fine with even just 1 body on board. Don't be afraid to just play him for 7 because Belphemon is going to be immune to effects. Even if you pass them a lot of memory, you're not going to be that afraid of them like removing it or anything, unless you're playing into a deck that has like one of the very, very few outs to Belphemon. But Astamon is also just crazy good for his Inherit. The Inherit is really nice. We've already talked about multiple ways that you can use them. You can pull out an extra blocker, pull out an extra attacker at the end of the opponent's turn to enable OTKs, or you can play one of the level 4 effects that pop things. Moving on to Belphemon. Belphemon is, of course, the star of the show, right? You go into Sleep Mode, and Sleep Mode is immune. He stops attacks, and then at the end of the opponent's turn, he turns into Rage Mode. He generally wipes your entire board, the entire opponent's board, and then having Security Attack +1 and Unsuspend does crazy amounts of damage. Sometimes you just have enough to OTK them on the spot, depending on how much of your board is left. You know, if you have like you might have like a Gizmon left over thanks to their own floating effects, or Astamon brings you out another body, and combined with that, you usually have like a route to lethal. And like I mentioned before, even if you only have, say, the Sleep Mode or if you only have the Rage Mode plus a Gizmon, and if they're at 4 security, you can just play Proto Gizmon for 1, pop that to unsuspend the Rage Mode and have lethal. And with cards like Gizmons that float them into themselves when they delete or other on deletions, you should have kept them down to 4 at some point earlier in the game anyway. So it's really, really strong. And there's also going to be moments that, right, if you go into Belphemon early enough, you're using it more as like a way to wipe their board and not just win the game. Like, you won't always have the OTK after you go into Rage Mode. But it's like super simple to like make a second one and just do it next turn. You can Sleep Mode just evolves over Rage Mode for 1 if that's an option for you, or you can evolve into Omegamon Sword. which is a really good follow-up play for your Belfies because he plays your Astamons from your trash, right? As well as another body for Astamon to pop. Optimally, that's probably going to be Gizmon AT, since on play will fill your trash with another Rage mode if you need it, or help you draw into the Sleep mode if you need it, and then will then float into an XT when you delete it to go get you another Karada if you need another Karada. And if you can make Belphemon without passing turn, another viable play is to then evolve that into a Zwart, which then will carry over the immunity for the turn, while also spawning you a new Sleep mode that will then have the stop your opponent's attack effect. Now let's talk about the options real quick. Gift of Darkness. You generally see this on a lot of lists. I think it's not that great of a card, but I think it's also a necessary card to include into the deck. The 6 cost to remove a body is kind of expensive, but it's like your only way to remove level 7s, which makes it really important. But the big thing you're probably playing it for is for its security effect, since that's like just a generally really good removal. And it's also a way to get Sleep mode out of your trash if, say, you don't have any in your hand. Which is going to be really important for those, what I've mentioned before, the follow-up turns where if Rage mode doesn't actually have enough damage to kill on that turn, you definitely want to go into a new Sleep mode right after. And next we talk about the Mem Boosts. Mem Boosts are really important. I think like the one weakness this deck has is consistency, so that makes Mem Boost extremely, extremely important. It also goes hand neutral, which is really nice because you have so many ways to like accidentally hand minus yourself all the way down to like nothing. So you definitely want to use Mem Boost and say Eismon to like keep yourself from going to 0. Like you really want to float around like 6 cards in hand, not go down to 2. And then Calling is a no-brainer. It's limited to 1 for a reason. It's really good for getting back the resources because you're drawing and discarding a lot, especially so. Like I mentioned before, you can go down to almost no cards in hands really quickly, and so it was really nice to have Calling to get back the cards that you're missing, especially something like Sleep mode. Sleep mode is probably the most important thing to be grabbing back out of your trash. And then finally, the Tamer, Karada. Really important, because without Karada, you don't have a way to outlevel 6s outside of Gift of Darkness, and Gift of Darkness costs 6, which is like not ideal. Him being a free level 6 pop is really, really good. And not only that, he's also really important for the Gizmons. He's the way that Gizmons are able to basically evolve all the way up into Belphemon. You're not really technically evolving, but it's basically an evolution line, right? But Karada is needed to enable that. And of course, his end of turn draw and discard effect is extremely, extremely useful. It helps you, dig for pieces that you're looking for if you play him early game, or it helps you trigger your Astamons if you have Belphemon out already, which is really nice because you really want to get that free body at the end of your opponent's turn.
And thank you so much, Tesero, for coming on to this, coming onto the channel, right, and doing this little deck profile. We really do appreciate it. And hopefully for the viewers at home, it helps you, level up your game, really demonstrate just how powerful this deck can be. Is there anything you want to say, Tesero?
Sure. Yeah. So if you really want to see like a demonstration of how this deck will play, tomorrow I'll be streaming on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/TeseroDCG, and I'll be playing Belphemon there. So if you want to check that out, you can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, and I would definitely say if you are looking for just really any purple-related content, Tesero is a very fantastic resource in terms of that. He has a lot of videos on Mill Loop, and I'm sure he's going to do a lot more content on BT13 and much more going forward, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah, so thank you all so much for watching, and peace out.
Peace.